Everybody hear me okay?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Great. Thank you for joining tonight. Appreciate it. This is Advocacy and Caregiver Group. I'm going to be talking about creating a community and network. What I'm going to do is go ahead and mute everybody so that there aren't any background noises, background distractions. And if you do have a question, there's going to be time at the end of the presentation to ask questions. But if you have a question that you want to ask during the course of the presentation and I can see you, go ahead and raise your hand and alert me, and I'll try and stop if I can. Otherwise, we'll go to the end when the question section arises. I'd also ask if you could log on to brightbod.com after the presentation, and if you could join my group, Advocacy and Caregiver Group 101, that would be fantastic. This platform works the more people that join, the more people that participate. It's extremely unique, and I think we've got a great opportunity to connect on a lot of different levels through this. So without further ado, I'm going to get into the presentation and go ahead and mute everyone. Again, my name is Jonathan Agan, and the first slide just shows a little bit of my background. We're going to talk about creating a community or a network. We're going to talk about why we need to create a community or a network as a patient or as a caregiver or as an advocate. How to find a community or a network. If you can't find one, how to create one. And then there are a number of considerations that we all must take into account if it's us that we are trying to advocate for as a patient or if we're a caregiver. There's a number of pitfalls that can arise participating in community message boards and in various networks that are formed for patients or for caregivers or for advocates. And then at the end, like I said, we'll take some questions. So first, the need. Well, number one, for support. It's the old misery loves company syndrome. Imagine that you are a new father and your 27-month-old daughter has just been diagnosed with a form of childhood cancer that only 350 children in the United States a year are diagnosed with. You feel lonely, you feel scared, you feel angry. You need to find as much information as possible as quickly as possible because the clock is ticking. You're also told that your daughter is terminal, that the type of cancer she has, there's no treatment for outside radiation, and radiation just buys you time. What do you do from there? Well, finding a community, finding a network is critical. And I can talk about this from my experience because I was that new father and I was pulled into a small room and told that my daughter had 9 to 12 months to live and that there were only 350 kids in the United States a year that are diagnosed with her type of cancer. It's a double-edged sword as you start to Google and you start to go online or you start to talk to other people about the diagnosis. At least it was for myself and her mother, because all the information that was out there talked about how it was a terminal diagnosis. But the first thing that we were able to do through finding a community was connect with other people that knew what we were going through and at the very least could offer that type of support. Treatment advice, obtaining medications, obtaining treatments, knowing how to navigate through the system. A community or a network allows you to get critical advice that can be the difference between life and death. Just today, I was talking to a father who just recently lost his child to a brain tumor. And he was talking to me about the fact that he wishes he had engaged in the online communities more when his son was diagnosed. because he just learned that the doctor that created the treatment protocol for his son, and his son had a form of cancer called medulloblastoma. 80% of kids diagnosed with medulloblastoma generally live 5 years or longer. And some of them can live a very, very normal life. If it recurs, it's universally fatal. What this father just learned is that the doctor that created the radiation protocol and then the follow-up treatment decided to go with a lower dosage of radiation because that was being tested in a clinical trial. And instead of being given the opportunity to choose the standard dosage of radiation, he didn't know because he didn't ask in the on the message boards, in the communities that existed, the people that are there to help. So finding a community that can help you navigate through, can answer questions, can tell you if something doesn't sound right or if something smells fishy, it's significant. Also, a lot of times, regardless of what the diagnosis is, whether it's you, whether it's your child, father, mother, anybody, sometimes medications aren't covered by insurance, as we all know. And there's a condition called periodic fever syndrome. And someone I know, their 7-year-old son suffers from what's known as periodic fever syndrome. There's not a real diagnosis behind it because it's just this catch-all. He can spike fevers over 107. And his body essentially has an auto-inflammatory condition. Well, she's been down to NIH, the National Institutes of Health, with her son, and they told her that she should try Enbrel with her son. Enbrel is an arthritis medication, injectable. The problem is that it's not for the indication that her son is diagnosed with. Through connecting online with other auto-inflammatory parents and in other networks that she was able to find, and let me back up. Her son is a patient group of 1. What he has, she's been told he is the only patient in the entire world that they have ever seen with this complex of issues. So she doesn't have a true network or patient community group. But through connecting online and with other parents, she was guided into getting the medication for free, contacting the drug manufacturer of Enbrel, and basically pitching her story. And she ended her story to the company by telling them, look, if my son dies, it's on your hands. She would have only gotten that information through connecting in the ways that she has guidance. I think number 2 and number 3 are kind of similar. Guidance in terms of where to go, what doctors to see. When you think of most life-threatening or critical acute illnesses, it's not as black and white as you take this treatment and you're going to be okay. Different issues can arise while you're undergoing the treatment. In the case of my daughter, we had her medical team, but we also worked with folks that aren't medical doctors, people that recommended various supplements and vitamins and changes to her diet. We got that guidance from connecting with other parents, from doing our research online, and from talking to other people in the clinic when she was going for treatment. So sometimes we don't have computers. Sometimes we don't have the ability to connect online via the internet. We're fortunate, obviously, to be able to use the service and connect through Brightbot and form our own little community here. But a lot of people aren't. At your doctor's appointments, hospital appointments, clinic appointments, talk to social workers, talk to receptionists, talk to other people, and network with them. There's guidance in the waiting room. And again, it's the misery loves company syndrome is significant, especially when you're a patient population of 1 or a patient population of 350, or even if you're diagnosed with breast cancer, pancreatic cancer, you name it, colitis, any number of diseases. Finding other individuals that you can at least commiserate with is significant. And I'm convinced that it also plays a significant role in overall health and outcome. And then last but not least, why do you need to join in a community or find a network? Sometimes you may have to advocate for medications, for drugs, for treatments. Sometimes you may have to advocate for an accommodation at work. And connecting with people who have been there, who have done that, who have walked the same path that you have or your loved one has, again, they all, 1, 2, 3, 4, all go hand in hand. They all tie in together. Being part of a community makes us feel accepted, and it makes us feel as though we can face what we have to face. The need is significant. You have a blank page in front of you when you're diagnosed. You can write your story any way you want to. Having individuals to help you along the way and connect with helps you fill in those pages in a more meaningful way. Okay. Finding a community or a network. You're diagnosed. My daughter's diagnosed. Where do I go? Where do I look? We Googled. First thing we did. Funny thing is that the neurosurgeon who looked at my daughter's CAT scan, I'll never forget, it was about 11:30, 12 o'clock at night. I was standing in back of him looking at the computer screen. I had no idea how to read a CAT scan at that point. I'm not a doctor, but through my daughter's diagnosis and the work that I do, I've now learned how to read CAT scans. The first thing that he said to me was, do me a favor. Don't Google what I'm writing down for you on this card. Well, what's the first thing that we did? We Googled it. We found in every single document, every paper, everything online, universally fatal, no survivors. We started off with that cloud hanging over us. But once we were able to find a community online through Yahoo groups, Google groups, you name it. There are any number of groups that you can find online that offer the type of guidance and support and help that I've been talking about. One of the first things that happened is I connected with a father whose son was 3 years out from diagnosis. Remember, I was told that my daughter would be dead in 9 to 12 months, that was the typical course for 99% of the children diagnosed with what my daughter had. I found a father whose son was 3 years out from diagnosis and doing well. He wasn't on treatment. I found him just by Googling and getting involved in a patient group. And he offered guidance, and some of his guidance I took. Some of it I didn't. He ripped the carpeting up in his house because he thought the carpet fibers helped cancer and helped the environment that created cancer. I didn't rip the carpeting up. He stopped using a microwave oven to cook for his son. I stopped using the microwave oven to cook for my daughter. That was simple enough. The point being that as I go further into the presentation, I'll talk about some of the risks and benefits of engaging in a community. But the point being, finding a community online, and that's the first thing I'm talking about in point number 2, can take some of the sting of the diagnosis away from you. or if you're looking for a doctor, or if you're looking for a clinic, or if you're looking for some way to get a medication covered by insurance. Again, whatever it is in the healthcare realm, being able to participate in a community or a network online can open up tremendous possibilities. Another avenue for finding a community network is through social workers. Now, I realize that if you're being treated for a condition that it isn't in the realm of a clinical setting or a hospital where there are social workers that you can engage with, this becomes a little bit more difficult. But it doesn't hurt to ask the receptionist at the doctor's office, or if you're in a clinical setting, asking if there are social workers. There are a lot of resources available that people don't take advantage of. And moving into point number 4, this ties in with point number 3. I was involved in a study by an insurance carrier that was trying to create better patient navigation systems for their insureds. And it was a lengthy process where they wanted to know what worked and what didn't work. And what they wanted to know at the end of the day was if they had people that were hired that weren't trying to ultimately save the insurance carrier money, which I know, it seems a bit strange, but there are certain insurance carriers out there that actually do care about their insureds. No offense if anybody works for an insurance company. I used to do work for insurance companies, but they can help you navigate, and they can provide you with information and guidance, and they can help you in terms of finding clinical trials if you need clinical trials. They can help you if your doctors aren't returning your calls, if they're not responding to your emails. In so many different ways, they can help you. And it all goes into creating a foundation, creating a community or network that you can fall back on, because there may be times when you just don't have the energy to advocate for yourself or advocate for your loved one or find the answers yourself. And finally, spiritual communities. Let's not overlook churches, synagogues, mosques, whatever your spiritual practices are. There is no doubt somebody within that network, within that community, that has encountered the same thing that you're going through or something similar, and they can help you find folks that you can communicate with and get answers. What happens if you can't find a network or find a community? Well, everybody here tonight has found brightbot.com. This is a service that's hopefully more and more people will take advantage of, because this is what it's all about. It's about connecting with people online. It's about sharing information. It's about demystifying what happens next after you hear the doctor or the social worker or the nurses telling you your child has cancer, there's nothing we can do, or you have diabetes, or you have colitis, or you have a heart disease. It doesn't matter. Whatever it is, you've got to figure out what course you're going to take next. Obviously, the doctors and the nurses are going to give you advice, but it's always beneficial to just make sure that they're giving you the right advice. Again, think about the father I talked to today who just found out that his son received half of the standard amount of radiation for his son. His son died basically because the doctor was following along with the clinical trial that the father wasn't enrolling his son in. So, creating a community network. I say there's unlimited possibilities because there really are. Today, if you have a computer, you can reach out to somebody. If you have a computer, have an internet connection, can get to a library, can log on to a computer, you can find any number of possibilities. And if there aren't, you can create your own Yahoo group. It's pretty simple. Along the way, after my daughter was diagnosed, I created a Yahoo group for childhood cancer foundations to join together, to share information, to advocate together, to join forces and raise our voices. It was pretty simple. It was pretty easy. I think it took me all of about 15 minutes to do. And despite being able to engage on this platform, I'm not the most technologically savvy person in the world. I'm often yelling and screaming at my computer at various points and times through the day. So if I can figure out how to create a Yahoo group, anybody can, or a Google group. The point is, those are but two opportunities to create your own group. Virtual communities exist through social media. Excuse me. If you're on a computer, you can create a Facebook page. You can set up your own network through Twitter, through Instagram. I use Twitter in my work, but there are people that use it that are a lot more savvy than I am and use it to connect communities. There's an unlimited world out there to connect with. And even if you're a patient population of one, like the 7-year-old with the autoinflammatory condition, there's other parents and families out there that may have similar conditions that can communicate back and forth together. You're limited only by what you can think about and what you can create. And then how to create a flesh and blood community. Where are you being treated? Are you being treated at a hospital? Is your loved one being treated at a hospital, at a clinic? What we found quickly at the pediatric oncology ward at the hospital where my daughter was treated and at the outpatient clinic is there were a lot of services and a lot of other people that were just as scared as we were as they watched their children fight the fight of their lives. And there was a group of mothers that formed up called Circle of Hope. They chose the name Circle of Hope, and what it was is they just started simply by sitting next to each other as their children were getting chemotherapy infusions, through talking about what they needed. And basically it was a way for them to vent. It was an outlet. I'm involved with a community online called Childhood Cancer Dads. As men, we're thought of as the strong individuals. We're not supposed to cry. We're not supposed to be emotional. But I can tell you, when your child's been given a death sentence, you cry and you're emotional. And when you're talking to other fathers, it helps so much. Again, it's the misery loves company. So there's any number of ways to create a network, to join a network. It's easy to do. It's as easy as whoever's sitting next to you at your next clinic appointment, at your next doctor appointment, or if there's a nurse that's in charge of the clinic or social worker, ask questions. Try and find out if they know of any support groups, any networks, any communities. And then you get to pick and choose what you want to do with participating. There are a number of caveats, though, obviously, that come with engaging in online communities or flesh and blood communities and networks. And so this is something that you've got to try and figure out for yourself based upon who you're dealing with. Number one, be careful of the information that you receive. In the community that I'm involved in with the type of cancer that my daughter had, you're told from the outset that it's terminal upon diagnosis. When you start getting involved in some of these communities and networks, people will tell you that they have the cure for cancer, or they will tell you that they know what to do and how to treat something. I used to get unsolicited emails all the time. Take this supplement. You need to do this. You need to go to this clinic. You need to go to that doctor. You need to fly overseas and try this therapy. Ultimately, at the end of the day, as the patient, as the caregiver, you've got to make a decision with respect to what type of therapy and what type of treatment and who you're going to communicate with. But just know that once you open yourself up to participating in an online community, you're really rolling the dice in some respects. So you've got to understand where the information is coming from, whether or not the person has any type of skin in the game. Somebody emailed me early on that a friend of theirs had a child with a brain tumor, and they were taking this supplement that had done wonders for them. And she offered to connect me with the president of the company who wanted to share information about it, and he shared information with me, and I talked to a couple of people that had taken it, and she asked me if I wanted to try it. I said, sure. My daughter was dead anyways. She was given a terminal diagnosis. Why wouldn't I try it if it wasn't going to hurt her? So she gave me a few bottles. It was a clear liquid that you dropped on a spoon. She took it, no issues. I ran out of the bottles. She reached back out to me, asked me how things were. She was doing well. My daughter was doing okay. She asked me if I wanted more. I said, yes. She said, well, I don't have any more, but I can order it for you. And every month I spent $160, $180 on 3 little bottles that in the end, I don't think did anything. There's things that we did for our daughter that I believe helped her. There's things that I would not do again. And this was a situation where I essentially got shamed into doing something for her, because why wouldn't I do everything in my power to try and save her? Ask your doctor or treatment provider or a nurse whether something sounds right, whether they think it's a good idea. That's a double-edged sword, because sometimes medical providers don't want to discuss what I like to call complementary care. A lot of people say alternative therapies, alternative care. I like to call it complementary, because in most cases, you're trying to complement the medical treatment. Early on, after my daughter was diagnosed, I was very angry, and I got into the belief that, of course, there's a cure for cancer. The government has a cure. The pharmaceutical companies have a cure. They're hiding it. They make so much money not curing cancer. A lot of people still believe that, and whether you do or don't, that doesn't matter to me. With that said, my anger led me to exploring treatments and therapies and alternative therapies that could have potentially harmed my daughter. I'm glad that at every turn we asked our treatment team whether or not it was something that they would do. In one instance, they said, don't use products that have heavy antioxidants, because antioxidants negatively impact radiation therapy. That was later disproved in a peer-reviewed paper, a scientific paper that changed the school of thought for clinical oncologists. So again, you've got to make the choice as to whether you believe what you're seeing or not, and just try and verify it. Be careful with what information you share. Excuse me. There are a number of instances I know where patients have shared information in a patient group, have shared information that you only share with your physician, and the information's been used against them somehow. In one case, I know a mother that her oldest daughter died of the same type of cancer that my daughter died of. She has 3 other children. The type of cancer that my daughter has or had, there hasn't ever been a genetic link. It's not inherited, it's not passed down. It's a mutation that happens in the genes and allows the cancer to form. Well, this mother lost one child, and then her other children started having symptoms. So they all had MRIs, and for some reason, they were diagnosed as well with the same type of cancer. Extremely rare that this has happened. I know of maybe one or two other cases where there have been multiple diagnoses in the same family. After the first child died, she started using cannabis oil to help her children. And let's just say she was not obtaining it legally. She was actually growing it. She found a way to prepare it herself. One of her family members caught wind of what she was doing through something she'd shared online. And next thing she knew, the DEA was knocking on her door and came in, guns drawn, with her kids watching, and took her away. She was let out, thankfully. She wasn't prosecuted. She doesn't have any relationship with that family member anymore. And she continued to use the cannabis treatment that she was doing with her children. And amazingly enough, her middle son, last MRI, which was a couple of years ago, they couldn't see the tumor. Whether or not it was because of the cannabis oil, I don't know. You make your own decisions with respect to what you are willing to do and what you're not willing to do. But my point is, be careful what you share, because in this case, she wound up with the DEA knocking on her door. Be kind. In the childhood cancer community, and I'm sure this happens in other worlds, other online communities, people will shame you into not trying a therapy, not trying a treatment, not going to a doctor, not, giving your child, this supplement versus the next supplement. I've seen some really ugly confrontations online that really aren't necessary. I think when it comes to being a caregiver for your child or for your spouse or your mother, father, anybody who you love, you're just trying to do the best that you can for that person. And there can be differences of opinions with respect to how you approach that. Just be kind, and also be mindful that people are people. Humanity sometimes rears its ugliest head in these situations. And then finally, if you're the patient, be careful of falling into the Me Too syndrome if you join into a community group, you join into a network. Every time I have an ache or pain in my back, I think that I have a disc issue, and I think that I'm headed down the road of having to have disc surgery. Or every time I have a headache, I think I have a brain tumor. And the more I go online and Google or interact with people in online forums, the more I'm convinced I have something dreadfully wrong with me. So just be careful about what traps you fall into with respect to the online communities that you participate in, because they can lead you down a dark path. That's the end of it. As always, we try and keep these to a short period of time. There's always more information to go through than there's time. So, if you have questions, I'd love to entertain them now. I'm going to unmute everyone. If not, I think we can give out my email if you'd like, and there's other ways to find me. If you just Google Jonathan Agan, you can find plenty of ways to get in touch with me. But as always, I appreciate everybody joining, and I hope that you've got at least something out of tonight's presentation. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask. I'm going to go ahead and unmute everyone. Does anybody have any questions?
Yes. Do you think, Jonathan, that being community-minded is a negative or a positive on the whole?
On the whole, I think it's positive. I've seen some bad interactions, and I've seen people that have really had some experiences that are sad. But by the same token, I've seen more positive impact and outcome from interacting with other folks in a community than I seen negative. For me, when my daughter did finally die in January of 2011, my entire life changed, and it changed for the better in a lot of respects. And I always say that my daughter's diagnosis was a gift. The fact that she died wasn't a gift, obviously. I will never say that, but she gave me a perspective. And through engaging online with the communities that I engaged in, I started advocating for other kids with cancer. And I started, joining in this community and helping out families that were far less fortunate than my family. And the people I've met along the way have just, I'll never forget them. And it's also allowed me to have a professional focus and a new career helping people and fighting for kids with cancer. And so I definitely think it's positive. Any other questions?
At 27 months old, what did you change your diet to?
So, that's funny because I was just emailing with somebody today that wrote a book talking about how she believes, what she believes in terms of diet and causing cancer and eradicating cancer. We tried to do mostly organic food, but, at 27 months old, you can't deny your child a cupcake or ice cream or cake or candy. She was an okay eater, not a great eater. She liked some fruits, some vegetables, but she had some McDonald's. I know people though that went to an all organic diet or went to something called a ketogenic diet, which is very restrictive. And it's a balance. When your child's dying, you don't want to make their life more miserable than it already is. And so, we tried to balance. I early on, I'm a runner, and in my running community, man came up to me that I knew, and he had a number of relatives with cancer, and he looked me in the eye and he told me that he knew that if you basically cut off all food sources to the body for a period of time, you'll starve the cancer because there's no sugar for the cancer to grow. And we did cut down on sugar, but I wasn't going to not give her ice cream and cake. But in any event, he said, you've got to fast, you've got to starve, and the body will choke the cancer off. And I said to him, but my daughter's 27 months old and she's just starting treatment and she's on these steroids that make her ravenous. How am I going to starve my daughter? Isn't that going to kill her? I had hope. I always had hope. Until she took her last breath in front of me, I had hope. And he looked me in the eye and he said, well, that's how it's done. I looked him straight in the eye and I said, you know what? If the cure for her cancer lay in your beating heart, I'd already pull it out of your body and you could see it right before you took your last breath. Again, I was very angry. People will try and tell you anything. You have to choose for yourself what works and what doesn't work. So, again, don't just take what you find in these communities at face value and just go with it. Think about it, whether it makes sense to you or not. So, any other questions?
No, not that I can think of.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate everybody's time. Again, if you go on brightbot.com and if you would join my group, I'd appreciate that. And hopefully I'll see everybody back next week. And thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.